Good evening and welcome to the Tucker Carlson Network live. Well, that was quite an experience watching that. You know, you think of Joe Biden as a doddering old man, a guy who can't remember when his son died or when he served as vice president. And of course, that's exactly who he is, and it's on display every day. But Joe Biden is also a cruel and vicious demagogue, a man who has no problem at all denouncing his fellow Americans or putting his political opponents in prison as he has done. And that was all on display tonight. That was possibly the darkest, most un-American speech ever given by an American president. In fact, it wasn't a speech. It was a rant, entirely lacking in decency or generosity to his fellow Americans. In Joe Biden's very first sentence, he compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. He did not describe Trump as the other party's candidate, which he is, a political opponent in a country that's had peaceful elections for 250 years. No. According to Joe Biden, Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler. He is an existential threat to freedom and democracy. If he wins, you will die, and so will your country. That was the first sentence. But that was really the last time he mentioned the United States at all for paragraphs and paragraphs. Biden quickly explained that actually his top priority has nothing to do with America. His top priority is sending billions more to Ukraine. A foreign war in Eastern Europe, a war across the world that has nothing to do with the United States, that the United States is not obligated by any treaty to join. Of course, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. A war that can only hurt this country and already has hurt it in grave and permanent ways. The invasion of Ukraine is the most important thing to Joe Biden. Not ending the invasion of our own country by drug cartels, which control huge swaths of the southern United States at this point, not our degrading economy you experience every day, not our collapsing schools where kids can't read at all, not the 100,000 fentanyl deaths every year, not the declining life expectancy that is obvious if you look around, collapsing public health, an epidemic of suicide and murder, things that hurt Americans, ghost armies of drug addicts living on the streets, right outside the chamber where the speech was given tonight. None of that matters. Biden's top priority is aid for Ukraine. It was deranged. You watch this, you thought, this is insane. Does anyone in the room think it's insane? They must. Here's how the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, newly elected, the man who leads Republicans, in fact, the top elected Republican in the United States of America. Here's how he responded as Joe Biden told the country that the invasion of Ukraine is his top priority. Watch this.
Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down.
This is crazy talk. There's no explanation of what the goal is here. There's lie after lie. Ukraine can stop Russia. No, it can't. This has gone on for over 2 years. NATO is stronger than ever. No, it's not. NATO is on its way to collapse, as is the economy of Western Europe. For not one sentence did Joe Biden explain what the goal of this exercise is, when we'll know we've won, and what the future should look like. Again, it was crazy talk. And yet, Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, nodded gravely. Oh, of course, he is completely on board with Joe Biden on this Biden's signature issue. And that's not a guess. As of this afternoon, Mike Johnson is secretly supporting Biden's agenda, sending another $60 billion to the oligarchs in Ukraine. Johnson plans to let Democrats onto the floor of the House to vote for this. This is a stealthy procedural move designed to shield him and other Republicans from criticism. Oh, the Democrats did it. But that's exactly what it is. He's the Speaker of the House. He could stop it, but he won't because he's on board. So why is he on board? Is Mike Johnson representing his own voters as he backs Joe Biden's signature agenda item, a war against Russia? No, he's not. Republican voters in Louisiana are not for this. Republican voters nationally are not for this. They hate this. It has nothing to do with them. And it's insulting. As their country is invaded, we send billions to prevent the invasion of another country that we have nothing to do with? But the Uniparty demands this, so Mike Johnson is doing it. And so at some point you ask, well, why are they demanding this, actually? Why is war with Russia the most important thing? If you look at the numbers or a map, it wouldn't be obvious that Russia would be America's main enemy. There are other candidates. Could it be because Russia is the largest white Christian country in the world? Maybe. Could it be because they're getting rich from war? Well, that's certainly true. And there may be other reasons as well. We could guess. But we don't need to, because we know that it's happening, and we know that war against Russia is not the only war we're going to be engaged in, and not the only one that Biden announced tonight. Biden also told the country that we're going to have boots on the ground in Gaza. Really? Or admitted it, in fact. American forces have actually been there for months. Did you know that? Did anyone ask you? Has anyone explained to you, no matter where your sympathies lie, what the point of this is, when we'll know we've won? What's the objective here? American lives will be at risk. But, of course, no one's told you. And, of course, you already know the point. The point is to suck the United States into another foreign war that can't possibly help the United States, a war that can only hurt us and already is hurting us. And we're doing this not because it helps us, but because foreign interests are demanding that we do it. America is being used, as we so often have been. And the result of all of this is that the world is now closer to nuclear war at this moment than at any time in history, closer than it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have no idea where this is going. You never do once people start to die, once wars begin. No PowerPoint can tell you, no speech to a joint session can tell you where this is going. It's dynamic. It's completely unpredictable. And that's why wise people pause before accelerating. But there are no wise people in charge in either party, on either side. Do you think Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, has any clue what will happen in a war with Russia? Of course not. You can't say where this is going. This is so reckless that it qualifies as suicidal. And maybe they are. But the rest of us aren't. But the most interesting fact of the speech was the emphasis. There was not a meaningful word for the entire duration about the things that actually matter to people who live here, like crime or inflation or fentanyl or the foreign army now occupying our country. Joe Biden doesn't care. There was no upside for you in any of the things that he said. But he does have a present for you. He's got something to give you, something you want very badly. Here it is.
Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following. And with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that. Clearly. Those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024.
Oh, well, you can't have a safe, clean country or groceries you can afford or schools that will educate your children. But you can't have abortion. You can have a lot more abortion. How's about some more abortion for you? That'll make you happy and free. You can have all the abortions you want. But, of course, you already could have all the abortions you want. Abortion is one thing, maybe the one thing, that's pretty easy to get in this country. Compare getting an abortion to getting an affordable new roof or a knee replacement. No. Abortion is everywhere. It's very easy to get. And it's easy to get because the government wants it to be, of course, unlike an affordable new roof. But what's interesting is why. Of all the services government could guarantee, why abortion? At a time when fertility rates of actual Americans are below replacement, Biden and his party are encouraging Americans to have fewer children. Now, if you have a handheld calculator, do the math on that. That's the path to extinction. Why would they want that? You're the leader of a country. Why would you want your people to have fewer children? You should ponder that. But let's say you're too old to have an abortion. Let's say it doesn't actually apply to you, this wonderful freedom that will make you happy. What can you do to guarantee that you will have no descendants? Well, you can always castrate your children and end your lineage. No more grandchildren. And Joe Biden wants to help.
I want to protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans is I have your back.
Oh, trans children, I have your back. That's not creepy. But that's what he's offering. Abortion, war, castration of children, not better roads and schools, cheaper electricity and food. No, abortion and war. Who wants all that? I mean, some tiny percentage of CNN contributors think those are the most important things. But most people would rather have cheaper electricity, cheaper food, better roads. And so what this means is that underneath all of the talk is a dire political reality. Joe Biden can't win. In a fair election, Joe Biden will lose in November. He cannot win. That's the thing that nobody in any media wants to say out loud. In a fair election, Joe Biden cannot win. So they're saying the opposite. Here, for example, is the pregame analysis over at MSNBC, which we watched while waiting for Biden to dodder up to the stage, waiting for the amphetamines to take effect. And keep in mind, as you watch this analysis, these are supposedly the smart kids. These are the smart kids, the ones with complicated glasses. These are the ones the White House looks to for guidance. And here's their analysis of Joe Biden's skills. Watch this.
This seems like a weirdly, a counterintuitive hot take, even though it's the most obvious thing you could say, which is that Joe Biden is good at politics.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Like, Joe Biden is good at politics. He's very good at politics. Like, the man really does know what he's doing, and you really see it in those sort of situations.
Joe Biden is just really good at politics. It's the one thing he's really good at. Really? If Joe Biden is so good at politics, why is he losing to Donald Trump, who the rest of us were assured was a retarded racist, who no normal person would vote for? But now Joe Biden is getting stomped by Donald Trump, but he's also at the same time good at politics? Right. Chris Hayes, ladies and gentlemen, the most famous lesbian in television. So, again, they can't win, but they're not giving up. So what does that tell you? Well, they're going to steal the election. And we know they're going to steal the election because they're now saying so out loud. Here is the Attorney General of the United States, the chief law enforcement officer of this country in Selma, Alabama, just the other day. Listen to this.
The right to vote is still under attack. And that is why the Justice Department is fighting back. That is why one of the first things I did when I came into office was to double the size of the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. That is why we are challenging efforts by states and jurisdictions to implement discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary restrictions on access to the ballot, including those related to mail-in voting, the use of drop boxes, and voter ID requirements. That is why we are working to block the adoption of discriminatory redistricting plans that dilute the vote of black voters and other voters of color.
Did you catch that? Of course, you're a racist. That's always the takeaway. But consider the details of what the Attorney General of the United States just said. Mail-in balloting, drop boxes, voter ID requirements. The chief law enforcement officer of the United States government is telling you that it's immoral, in fact racist, in fact illegal, to ask people for their IDs when they vote to verify they are who they say they are. What is that? Well, no one ever talks about this, but the justification for it is that somehow people of color, black people, don't have state-issued IDs. Somehow they're living in a country where you can do virtually nothing